now, but we travel full time in our RV, and so we were up in Washington a few hours away from Forks, and so we
Mhm.
did go up to visit there. We went to La Push. I do love La Push. It's a really beautiful area.
Welcome to the Delos Diaries, where we explore the untamed frontier of writing and creativity. Join your host, Paul Delos Santos, a writer and self-published author, as he navigates the ever-evolving world of storytelling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Delos Diaries. I'm your host, Paul Delos Santos, and today I'm joined by author and YouTuber Taylor and Wright. How you doing today, Taylor?
I'm doing great. It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's always fun to kind of meet other content creators in the author tube space because I feel that's such a cool little cozy corner of the internet that I'm glad to be a part of now. It's kind of always fun to see other authors, but lead off question. Every guest gets asked this, no matter how we start, is what got you into writing? Because it's just the backstory is important for writers.
100%. I love that question. I have honestly been a lover of reading and writing all of my life. I'm an only child, so I would read books out loud to like my stuffed animals and my pets. That was a constant thing I did. And I wrote my first story when I was 8. I like typed it all out on the computer. I had my little JPEGs from Google and like all of this stuff. And then I don't know. I wrote all through middle school, all through high school. I really think it saved me. It was such a support system for me to process different things that you go through when you're a young person. And yeah, it's always been there for me.
You mentioned that's always been there for you, like as an only child, because I really have two siblings, so it's just not a really. But my cousin is an only child, and she loved reading as well. So, what is it about like that whole, and only it feels like only children do have a gravitation toward reading. It seems like.
Yeah, it's such like it's a thing that you do by yourself, like reading is, and you can go to different places in your mind and like the whole process of it. And it takes up a lot of time. So it's one of those things where my mom would be like, okay, here's a book, go on. And then I would just, be alone and reading in my room. That and of course like Disney movies on VHS was a huge thing for me. And yeah, I really feel like my mind, I was always creating stories, like even when I would play as a kid, like I was creating like these whole storylines and I'd have the big bad guy and the hero. And yeah, that was always just something I'd done as a kid. And I think reading just kind of fueled that. And being an only child, you have no one to really hang out with but yourself. So I got really good at that when I was a kid.
And then that also, having to be by yourself in those moments, how much did that impact your imagination? Because imagination seems to be, a big portion of a lot of writers and what we do in terms of creation. But how much did it help that the fact that you did have to come up with your own stories, your own types of things to play with, because you are essentially growing, like playing by yourself in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's such a great like observation. I don't think I've ever like looked back at my childhood like that. And that's so true. I really do think being an only child and spending that time with my imagination and letting myself like who's going to tell you no? Like like the sky's the limit when you're a kid, and especially when you're by yourself and you can just dream up these like impossibilities. So I definitely think that helps. And like even now, like when I think about like my writing process, like I do obviously still talk to my friends and my other like people that write, but I also talk a lot to myself. And like I'll get excited if I write something, and like I feel like you have to be, as much as you're your own critic, you have to be your cheerleader as well. And so I think when you're doing that alone as a kid, like there's no one there to really criticize you. And so your imagination just can kind of do whatever it wants.
Yeah, and I think that's a very it's one of those weird things that, even though grew up with two siblings, it's funny because I enjoyed the time by myself more to create things and kind of play in the whole situation by myself. So, creating those
Yeah.
dramatic scenes and sequences. So, so what are some of your author influences? Because it's like, as someone who has read a lot, it's just one of those, things like who inspires you as a writer to kind of be like, this got me into this specific genre of YA and everything like that. So what really drove you to go into the genre that you went to?
I gotta say, probably the first thing that comes to mind is Twilight. Like
Okay.
I
Very, very
went
common, by the way. Very common.
Yes, 100%. And like that whole era of, like Divergent, I'm sure like everybody, a lot of people are influenced by that era, just in like the book community. And when Twilight came out, I was in middle school, high school. So it
Mm-hmm.
was peak adolescence, peak like imagination. And a lot of what I was writing in middle school and high school was vampire, werewolf, like something fantasy like going on. And so I don't know. I do think that kind of developed the story and like the series that I'm writing. And even the first book in the series is a book that I had written in eighth grade and just adapted to be what it is now. And that's how the whole series was birthed. And honestly, like I remember the feeling of reading Twilight, and that they're like bricks. That whole series is
Yeah.
like really chunky books. And so you feel satisfied also reading it, but I remember just the emotions I felt and what I went through reading those books. And even now, that's kind of my goal when I'm writing, is to make the reader feel something. And it's still always in like the forefront of my mind when I'm writing things or plotting things out, is like, how can I get the reader to feel, and what are they feeling right now? And how can I get them
Mm-hmm.
there? You know? So Twilight was a huge a huge influence on me for sure.
Have you been to Twilight City, like that town in Washington where they're like the film that it's based out of? Because I have a former student who actually went to Twilight Con just to go to that area.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've actually been there. I want to say 3 times now, but I we travel full time in our RV, and so we were up in Washington a few hours away from Forks, and so
Mm-hmm.
we did go up to visit there. We went to La Push. I do love La Push. It's a really beautiful area. And then yeah, Forks we've driven to many times. There's really not much there, like aside from like Twilight propaganda, but it's still just so cool to be there. Yeah, I did go for sure.
Nice, nice. You do have, like, you mentioned that your first book is eighth grade book that you started and kind of sprinkled through the course of its history, and then here you are now with it published. But I also
Mhm.
saw in your latest video a couple days ago that you're also in a vision of writing a V2. Like, what is that
Mhm.
experience like? Because it's always like this is something that I think a lot of older writers don't conceptualize. But now with the era of Amazon, with the way it is and the ability to change transcripts and change and control your, so to speak, narrative a little bit, how much has that process been? And talk about that process a little bit. And also, how much fun has it been to revisit the story and now take the skills you've adapted to and develop the story a little further?
Yeah, absolutely. So I the process of coming out with the second edition of Venture Below, which is book one, like I said, I had written it in eighth grade. I reread it in my like really early 20s, and I was like, there's something here. The writing is not up to par because an eighth grader wrote it, but the story itself has some meat, to it. And so I took that idea and I rewrote it. But even when I did rewrite it and hit published in 2021, I was not that developed as a writer yet, and I didn't know the full process to publishing. It was more so I let my friends read it, and they were so excited and so supportive that they were like, oh my gosh, I want this on my shelf. So that's what pushed me to do it. And writing was always just one of those fun things I did. And after I hit publish, I was like, wait, this is actually so much fun and incredible. And how can I do this like for my life and actually aim at this and do this like more than just a passion? And so that's what spurred me on. Obviously, I had to complete the series. So I was working on book two and stuff, but always in the back of my head as I was writing, I mean, I'd written so much since hitting publish on Venture Below that I had developed just the craft of storytelling, but also my characters I really value and my writing style. I feel like my prose and like just all of it has changed so much. And I don't know. I never felt satisfied, I guess, with Venture Below. I just knew I could do better than the story that I had hit publish on. And so I was like, okay, I'm still proud that I did it. I'm still proud that I took that step because otherwise I wouldn't be here. Like I probably never would have published anything if I hadn't have published it. So instead of just moping about it, I'm like, let me change it. Let's take some actionable steps here. So I was determined to just do a line level read and try to change up kind of more like nitpicky things that were bothering me. And I sat down to do this, I don't know, maybe a week and a half ago. And I started rereading and I genuinely couldn't get past like the first chapter. And so I was like, okay, what are we doing? So I sat down with myself and I was like, okay, Taylor, if we're going to do this, then we got to do this. And I'm just going to rewrite the entire story. And so I ended up calling Natalie Jane Shields, who's another amazing author, YouTuber, and she also helped me outline for book 2. And she's kind of my outline buddy. Like, I don't think I'll ever do it again
Mhm.
without her. Like, she's so good at like that collaborative effort. And so we sat down together, we went through the original book, Adventure Below, and then we started outlining what could be for this new edition. And the whole point is we're going to keep the major plot points that happen, but how they happen and the characterization that goes on, all of that is what's changing. And it's so much stronger. Oh my gosh. So now, as of like today, right now, I just finished chapter 6 of my rewrite and I hit 11,000 words. Um, the words are pouring out of me. I feel like I know the characters so much better. I know the world so much better. The magic system, all of these secrets and the layers that go into this story in a way that I did not even see as a possibility in
Mhm.
2021. And so in writing book 2, I mean, there's a bunch of new kingdoms that come into play. So I'm being able to put those seeds now in book 1. And book 3, there's so much tragedy that happens that now I'm laying down this symbolic things that are happening in like the first chapter. It's really been incredible, and the character voices are so easy for me to slip in and out of. I don't I'm just, and I'm having so much fun. Where at first I was kind of bogged down by it and I was like, man, I have to rewrite this entire book. Like that, I don't know. Part of me was like not looking forward to it. But then as soon as I actually started getting into it, this like that excitement like started building up inside of me. And I was like, wait, this is so much fun. And it felt like when I had first started writing, like that same
Mhm.
giddiness, like that started to come back to me. And now it just makes me more excited to finish up book 3 and the whole series. And I'm hoping, knock on wood, fingers crossed, that all 3 books and the second edition will be published like this year. So which is crazy, but if
Yeah.
I can manage it, we're gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have deadlines. I mean, it's because as published authors, it's one of those unique situations. Like, we don't have deadlines. We don't have the luxury of a publisher getting on our tail saying we need this done by so so.
Right.
So it's always better to have these types of deadlines. But what your process sounds like is a practice in public process, which you published
Mhm.
a book, learned, adapted, and now you're going
Mhm.
back to do what a very nonfiction trait is, which is release a second version with added and stuff like that. So, how
Yeah.
is that? How was that experience for you? And do you plan on like taking this, basically the process of rewriting your first draft, your first published book, and turning that into the process, the longer term process, where it might take longer to publish the next book after the series, where you take a little longer, but also go through the steps so you don't have to go through the enormous rewrites of going through the
Yeah.
second part again.
No, for sure. I think the biggest problem with Venture Below is I genuinely knew like close to nothing about publishing,
Yeah.
about drafting, about writing, like nothing really. And so I did not get that edited as much as I should have. I didn't edit as much as I should have. I wasn't looking at the developmental issues with it. I literally wrote it and was like, we're good. Like everything's good. I'm just gonna like pay somebody on Readsy to double check things and then hit publish. And so now I have developed my drafting process from that experience, so I don't do that again. I learned that even with the second book, Venture Beyond, where now I take it through a minimum of like 4 drafts. Like we're working through
Mhm.
it. I'm sending it to beta readers. I didn't even know beta readers were a thing in 2021. So it's like I've just learned all of these steps that are so crucial to the writing process, and like more so like putting your work out there. And so getting ARC readers, even just having somebody that's trusted that you can get this draft to and have their initial reactions, like, is this how I want them to be feeling at this point? Like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
Like, how is the story coming across, type of a thing? And all of that has really changed my writing process. So even with Venture alone, my goal would be to publish it in like November, December. But there's a caveat where I'm like, if I need more time, I'm going to give myself that. Like, I know now how many drafts it's going to take me through. And like right now, I just finished draft 2, and I still know I'm months, if not
Yeah.
more, like away from it. So I have learned my lesson to like take my time, make sure this is like the best I can make this book. And I don't know. I think my priority has really changed of like I want this so bad. Like I'm like I want to be an author. I am an author, but you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I
Yeah, yeah,
want
yeah.
to do this. I want to write. I want to give it my all. And so it's just I don't know, it's changed kind of everything, and now I feel like I'm telling the story that Venture Below was always meant to be. And now I'm a, I don't want to say good enough writer, but a more developed writer where I can execute it the way I wanted to. Like I think 2021 Taylor would be so proud of what I'm producing right now.
Feels like a confidence thing where you gain that confidence as you go and
Yeah.
do more of it. What would you, you mentioned the process of learning on basically through publication and doing all the crazy things that you went into releasing a first book without really knowing the process. But in looking back on it now, if you were to give Taylor from 2020 2021 advice, what would be the first thing you tell Taylor to do before even writing the book?
That's a great question because I did a lot of research in my head, at least. Like I was trying to look things up, I was trying to find blogs, and there really was no full author sphere of YouTube at that time. So I honestly think there is so many great resources on YouTube and so many people that have experience in publishing and have firsthand this is what they've gone through, and explanations, and there's so much more knowledge just at your disposal I think through YouTube, and I learned personally through like visual and like through auditory. So I would say just start looking stuff up on YouTube. And also, I mean, there's so many aspects to it, but okay, if I'm talking to past me, yeah, I would tell her maybe not to hit publish right away. Just respectfully to me, I would be like, "Girl, let's hold on a second." And also, I really came out swinging with putting out a series. I think I might have wanted to have a first, if not second draft of the second book done before I hit publish because I ended up spending years. I think it was like 3.5 years before I hit publish on Venture Beyond. And so I had people like, girl, what are we doing? And I'm like, I'm learning all of this stuff I should have been learning. And it was so stressful because I realized like I was behind in my like where I would have wanted to be with publishing Venture Beyond. So I don't know, my tips would maybe be like don't feel so pressured to like hit publish, like really learn, and if you're not sure reach out to somebody, ask questions. I don't know, that's probably what I would recommend because I really didn't have anybody in my life that was writing or was an author. Like I didn't have anybody in my circle, and now I accredit my knowledge, like my growth of knowledge, based on my friends and off of YouTube, like completely. So
Yeah, it's weird because I, on the other hand, it's funny because I feel confident in my writer's voice. I have been since I graduated from college and got my first nonfiction sports reporting job. So it's now this weird like fiction mindset that I'm in, like writing fiction. So it's very like this, like it feels like there are moments when I don't feel like it's my voice, but I can crank out words like it doesn't feel like it. Put the pairs on a page and not think about it. But at the same time, it's like I'm looking at it now. I'm just like I got to like change a few things, and it just feels like the process is different for me now. I think
yeah.
I think we were at different points of our writing journey when we first started writing fiction. You were new to the whole like conception of publishing, editing, and the process. Well, I'm walking into design. I'm like, I got a first draft done, but I'm like 5 drafts away from being done. That's how I am. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you balance that like goal for perfection, knowing that it's impossible, and kind of like being like, okay, it's the best shape. How do you know it's at the best shape it is possible?
That is such a good question. And it's really hard. I'm also a perfectionist. So,
Hmm.
man, I think this question has come up quite a bit in like
Yeah,
streams and even with my friends and stuff who are like, girl, how do you hit, like, how do you know to hit publish? How do you know to
yeah.
let it out there in the world? Because you really could sit on that story for the rest of your life and it never be like you're always going to raise the bar because you're always going to become a better writer. And I think that's where I had this hard line of do I rewrite Venture Below, like, or am I going to regret it in like 5 years and be like, oh, I wish I could rewrite Venture Below now? And it's just one of those things of we're always developing and getting better. But I think, I honestly think if Oh my God, it's so hard. That's so hard.
Yeah, it
I
is.
don't know. I'm
It's the
still trying to
hardest thing to
discover it.
decide.
Yeah, I mean, for
It's
me, a big
so
factor
weird.
is like, is the story like, I don't know, like, can someone understand? Like, can somebody grasp the story? I mean, really, a big factor is beta readers, honestly, and like
Yeah.
how people are consuming this story. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is what you were trying to conceive making it into their brain? Like, if that makes any sense. And like, even with
Yeah.
characters, like, are they fleshed out? I mean, when it comes to like the very nitpicky line level things, like,
Hmm.
the issue becomes you could edit a line to death and it lose life and it lose voice. And I think it was Stephen King who even said, like, usually the first thing that you write is the best version of that thing, but it's because you, like, it may need one or two words that need tweaking or something, but for the most part it's like that's the way that your voice is trying to say it. And so to like look at that and not criticize it overly, but then find like that happy medium of making it easier to read. I don't, it gets so hard and complicated with that. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a great question.
And
Yeah.
I don't think you'll ever know. I think,
Yeah.
truthfully, I don't think, I think it's so much of a feel thing to be like, I have done the best I can with this project. There's nothing more I can realistically do at this moment. I've gone through, I think there has to be like a hard line where you have to just tell yourself, it's the best it's going to be. It could be great 5 years from now, and it won't bother
Yeah.
me. I think my biggest weakness as a writer, and I just talked about this in the AuthorTube newbie video that's going to come out like in next week. I did the AuthorTube newbie tag, so I'm gonna do it on another channel. So it's
Oh,
like,
awesome.
but the thing, yeah. So I mean, I will, it's a new channel that's launching with just strictly like videos and stuff. So like the
That's so
vlogging and all that side
fun.
aspects. Yeah. So that channel's starting up. This episode will be out after the fact, but I mean, yeah. But truthfully, like, I said my weakness there was that I can put words on a page, but it takes forever for me to edit. That's one weakness.
Mm.
Looking back on the video, I think my biggest weakness is the fact that, I know how to say screw it, it's good enough. And my other biggest weakness is I don't read my work after the fact it's done.
Oh, like at all?
At all. I
At
can't
all?
stand at all. Like all my newspaper
Oh,
articles, all my journalism, like I have a ton of published work on the line through the internet, through sports. I probably read like one or two of them over again. It's so
wow.
weird. It is so weird. As I think it goes back to that idea where if you read something, you're gonna find the holes and the
Yeah,
perfectionism. You're like, oh,
for
I should have
sure.
done this, I should have done that. I'm like, I think that's where it is. I think that's where my general fear of it is. Now I know it's probably not good to do. I think I should. Like, I think I'm gonna try to change a couple things as I approach writing my first novel. But it's that whole concept, like a short story, for example. Once I turn it in, I'm like, I mean, it's done, it's published. It's like nothing you can do.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a weird trait of mine. I don't know why that's the case, but I think that's a very much a perfection driven thing where I'm just like, I don't know, like I don't want to read this. It's weird, you know?
Yeah. Maybe read it back. You're gonna find some gold, even if
Yeah,
there's a line that you would change. Like, it's still good, you know.
yeah. And I think the last time I did read something I wrote, I was sharing it with my journalism students when I was a teacher, and they're like, "Man, this is bad," and then they're like, "Yep, yep, yes, sir, they were. It was." I'm like, "Thank you, honest high
Oh,
schoolers. I love you all."
oh,
Yeah,
oh
no, and that's
no.
the greatest thing. Is like, and I think like, I think it helped me in the long run in terms of like developing thicker skin when it comes to like, oh, people don't like it. I understand that. It's like, not everyone. My writing is not for everyone. I think that's a clear cut thing. We know that. I think that's something you learn as an author over the course of your time. But how did you get over that initial fear? Like, people are gonna be like, oh, I don't. This is not a story for me. Like, how do you get over that whole like, going from trying to write for everyone to now writing toward your audience that is gonna love your book?
That is so, it's honestly so difficult. And I'm like, will it ever get better? Like, can somebody tell me if this will ever get better? Because I love to read as well. And I come in with this idea of, I know not every book is for me. So I know
Mhm.
my book isn't going to be for everyone, but you don't want to accept that. You know what I mean? Like a part
Mhm.
of you is
Yeah,
like, but
you
it
don't.
could be like, see the gold, guys. Like, look, it could be something really good. So, but I also know that like I don't like every single book, and some viral books that everybody loves, I'm not the biggest fan of. So I can
Mhm.
acknowledge that. But when it comes to your own like precious baby, like obviously people of course have a right to their opinion, but it still hurts. Like I don't know if that'll ever go away. But yeah, some people I accept. I'm like, yeah, if you don't vibe with it, then you don't vibe with it. Like I can't be
Mhm.
offended by that. I DNF books left and right. And so I don't know. That's very, very hard, but it is kind of balanced with, and also it plays into me rewriting Venture Below as well, because Venture Below, I mean, there are some people that gave it 5 stars, that are over the moon about this story, that really love these characters, that don't see, I'm sure they see faults, but
Mhm.
just from their reviews, from how they talk to me about it, they're obsessed. And like, then I'm like, really? Like, do you know what I mean? Because I'm looking back at it with these perfectionist eyes, and I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, like, awesome. Well, I'm gonna make it better. So it is difficult to go about that, but I try to remind myself of the person that loves the book, that loves the series, or that could love the book, that could love the series. And when it comes to, oh man, writing with readers in mind, honestly, it stopped me for those 3.5 years when I was working on Venture Beyond. That was incredibly crippling for me because I was overly thinking about the reader and not thinking about the story anymore. And so I lost touch with, even now, I'm kind of struggling with that when it comes to the third book in the series of how to end off certain storylines and certain characters and their endings and stuff. And I'm like, well, readers would want a happy ending. Or like, well, readers would want this to happen to this character when it's not true to the story or to the character or to the plot. And so like fighting myself pretty regularly on that. And again, I think as I grow and develop as a writer, as I have more books out under my belt, like I think that will probably never go away, but I think I'll be able to hear my own voice like more and more.
Yeah, and it feels like as we progress as writers and grow as writers, it's a thing that we have to look forward to. Is like we have to like I think that's the bigger role of an editor is to look from the reader's point of view because we do have the writer's story that we have to tell. I think we have to be honest to ourselves first and let the editor do their job and kind of let them look at it from the reader point of view because they're the ones essentially our first readers. Like I think I'm taking an editing course right now through my MFA program, and I think my editing philosophy is very much like reader first, as in a reader first, writer second, because the writer has ideas and the reader has ideas. So let's go look at the reader first. But then I would ask you, like, if let's say I was coaching you, I would legitimately ask you, what is your goal for this book? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to thematically do these things? So as a reader, I can focus on that and give you that feedback that can help you get to that point. I think that's the role of an editor. I think that's a good editor, like from a perspective. That's what I look for when that's what we'll be looking for when I finish my first book. I think that's the main thing is that someone who will ask me legitimately what is your intent with the themes and emotions of the book and then certain points and then look at it from that reader perspective and kind of like see that aspect that we don't see because we're stuck in the forest. And it's so cool how when you start doing like your own like editing philosophy and trying to like be an editor on the side, it's so weird how much you develop like that ability to be like like it's hard for me to it's easy for me to turn it off, but once I'm in it, I'm like in it. Like, so how do you do your editing process when you're making small revisions on your own before you send it to the beta readers?
Yeah. So my process right now is draft one is get it out. I turn off spell check. I don't look at anything. I'm just trying to get the story out. Draft two, I will usually, it just depends. Like for Adventure Alone, it was very much I had to rewrite 45,000 words just because I realized my act two, act three was not what I wanted it to be. So I rewrote that. And so what I will do for draft three is go through, I have this like highlight key that I use. So it's a couple different colors that all mean something else. And I'll go through, I'll read it just straight with that. So I have a color for like rewrite. I have one for like a new word choice. I also have a color for a line that I like, which is actually really important because I'm not just looking for the bad things. I'm looking for the gold, like I was talking about, like something that I can see is highlighted blue and know when I am editing to either edit it like less than I probably would because I do enjoy that line as it is, like just raw. I have one for like brackets. I have one for fact checking, which is for like continuity when it comes to my series. But then also if it's a fact of like a ship, like what this thing is called, like I don't freaking know. I'm not a pirate. So like those type of things. So I usually reread
Mhm.
and I'll do a highlighting process like that, and then I'll go through and make those changes until the only highlights that are left are the blue ones. And then
Nice.
yeah,
I think that's a cool way to do it. I think that it's like the multiple highlighter version.
yeah, I really enjoy it. And then from that
I
point,
think.
I'll usually print it off and do like a red pen edit just to fix like really fine line things. And for the most part, that's not me like cutting scenes or like anything like that. I'm usually just getting like really nitpicky with my word choices or like how a sentence is structured. And then from that point, I'll put those changes in and then send it off to a couple different people. But right now, I even have people that are reading Venture Below chapter by chapter as I'm writing it. So that's new. That's kind of fun. I just am mainly getting like gut reactions to different things. And then also Natalie is one of the people I'm sending it to, so she can kind of be like, "Ooh, don't forget to add this," because she knows the outline. So that's really nice to have. Like I already added in a scene to the prologue by her recommendation because she was like, "Ooh, don't forget to put that there," like we talked about, and I'm like, "Thank you." Like I forgot about that. So yeah, that's been a new thing that I really love because even Natalie is sending me chapter by chapter of her book, and she said how much that helped her just to have that kind of accountability of like, hey, where's my chapter? Like, where's the next part? Like, I need that. I need the book. Like, it's so good. And so I was like, let me try that out. And it is really helpful to have somebody that is eager and like anticipating the next part of this book to keep you writing. You know, because you're like, ooh, I want them to like read this next bit because it's going to be super crazy or whatever it
Mhm.
might be. You know?
Yeah, I know that's actually a cool way to do it because some people do love their serial fiction, like the TV show kind of deal. So I contemplate doing that. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that because it's very different writing styles in terms of like how you have to, as and that's like more for a comic type of story. You write an episode and so it's like one of those weird new things. So what is your outlining process like? Like how did you like what is ultimately like how did you start outlining? Because it seems like you were a pantser to start and then became more of a outliner plotter.
Yeah, 100%. I pantsed Venture Below. Don't recommend that. Especially for a
No.
fantasy project. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And so I honestly didn't start outlining like how I do right now until Venture Beyond, like this past, what became kind of the final version of this story. And that was because of Natalie, 100%. And she was like, um, I was looking into the 27 chapter outline because she sent me a video. Again, YouTube is a great resource. And she sent that to me and recommended that I look through it because I was having a hard time with the story structure. And I watched it. So I was like, okay, let me put in these 27 chapter plot points. And even if it is more than 27 chapters, like some beats are going to take longer than just one chapter type of a thing. And I was so stuck. And Natalie was like, okay, well, let's do it together. Let's hop on a FaceTime call, add me to the document. So we did. And we broke it up kind of just in Google Docs, like a table. So like we had the chapter 27 plot point that was supposed to happen, and then what we were having happen in the story. And she was in there and she just let me word vomit, and she was like taking notes essentially on what I was saying, like rattling off. Or I would be like, "Oh, I'm seeing this. Like this could happen, then this could." And she'd be like, "Okay, write it down, tell yourself." And I was like, "Okay, okay, okay." And it was so cool to have this kind of ping pong situation where we were feeding off of each other's energy and like the story was unfolding before us. It is so much fun. And so that's kind of my outline process now. Like again, I genuinely only outline with Natalie. Like Venture Below's outline isn't fully completed yet, and I'm waiting to have another FaceTime call with Natalie to do it. I don't think you need a partner, but if you're lucky to have somebody that is can be that for you, like I'd say try it. Like try it out. It's very fun. But yeah, that's kind of what I do. And even for Venture Below, I don't have the 27 chapter
Mhm.
outline because I already have like my what I'm looking for as a reference is what previously happened in the original version of Venture Below. So I mean, will I probably use other structures like plot structures like the hero's journey or even like save the cat beats in the future? Probably just to try it out. But I don't think you have to only stick to like what that outline is recommending. Like we learn the rules to bend them. So I think it's fun. But yeah, definitely tell the story you think it should be told, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It feels like there's a I've tried different outlining things, and I realized that I'm gonna probably do a video on this, like how I came to my outlining video style, like trying not to save the cat, 27 plot points. I think the one it's blanking me right now. I'll put in the description below. But I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like there's so many different ways to outline now, so many different variations that you can find one that works for you. And I think that's what ultimately the takeaway from this is: find outline style for you. Because if you don't outline in a way like I don't think I could ever outline like a Brandon Sanderson. Let's face it, that's like writing a mini novel before you write a
Yeah.
whole novel. I think
Like
that's
mine are
that's
bullet points that are borderline hilarious because I'm just like, then this dude gets really pissed, hee hee ha ha, and I'm like, lol. Then they die. Like it's notes to myself. Like I don't know. At that point, that's like a
yeah,
zero draft. If you're making it like super like detailed like
yeah.
that. Yeah,
hmm So I feel like that's kind of like what happens is that some people think they have to do it this way, and like I think ultimately the best advice that both Taylor and I can give is just do what works
mm,
for you. I mean, it is your story. Find out how it's going to make it easier for you to take this core elements and move it to a bigger
for
page. I think
sure.
that's to a longer page. So, it feels like there's a lot of questions in terms of that. But I mean, it feels like you have a good idea of where you're going with your series. I mean, what are you planning after the series? Let's say you hit your goal of finishing all three books by this year, like having all three published by this year. Would be next for you? Because it is like, as writers, we always think of
Yeah,
what's
I
next.
have a document on my Scrivener, and it has 28 book ideas in it. So that's that. But I have a romance project that has I've been diving into it. Like it's one of those things that when I want to write and I like it's like a treat, like to write in this romance project. I'm at about
Mm,
56,000 words in it right now. And I'm nearing that like ending part of this story. And so I would love to finish that out and potentially work on that and see, how I want to go about it. Is it something I want to, I don't know, I guess dip my toes in traditionally publishing because I'm not completely opposed to it and I would want to just get that experience under my belt. So
hmm
potentially do some hybrid type of a thing as an author. And then I have other fantasy projects which I'm like, girl, we can't keep writing fantasy series. Like they take so much out of you. But I feel like now that I have written the Venture series, I know what it takes. Like before I didn't know what it would take to go into it. So now I do, and I have one that involves dragons that I am heavily, heavily interested in. And I really want to like get my claws into that book. I have a couple other ones. I have a lot of romance projects in mind. I would love to dip my toes into like a short story collection. I'm really open to like any genre. I think that would be super fun to like try my hand at a thriller, or try a horror, and that's like the beauty of being an indie author is like you have that flexibility and that freedom to do so. And even like litfic is probably my favorite genre to read. That and classics. So I don't know. I don't know if I would ever be capable of writing like literary fiction, but it's one of those like, why not? Like I'll try it, and I think that's why it's just so much fun being a writer.
Yeah, it's a fun job. I think it's just like if you can get to it, it's a fun overall aspect. And it's you mentioned Litfic, and I think right now my MFA thesis project, which is my second project, I'm kind of pushing that off the side till early January next year. But my literary thesis project it feels like a contemporary fiction piece with an urban
Ah.
fantasy twist. Where there is like
Oh.
where the focus is more on the contemporary side in a fictional fantasy world. So it's kind of like this whole
Mhm.
like like a lot of spec fic will turn into like, oh, speculative fiction. That's the focus with the contemporary elements in there. I'm going contemporary, adding the spec fic influence into it because I
Yeah.
feel that's like a unique kind of spin on
Wow.
it. So I feel that's my thesis
Yeah.
project because I was writing a scene for a class recently, and I was like, "Oh, this is spec fic," not because it felt like a contemporary like
Mhm.
scene. So I was like, "Okay, I need to add some spec fic." So I just at the last line is like the gray dot started to glow. So
Oh.
yeah, so I'm like,
Yeah.
there you go. That's what I'm saying. Is that like the whole scene is like a very like dark and very key point in the relationship between the not going into too many details, but it's a key point in the relationship of the family dynamic, and it's very much like a very traumatic scene for the character, and then you add in the
Mhm.
element of like the speck fig, which is just the dot that she left because she was drawing in her notebook and starts to glow. So it's that type of stuff that I feel you know that I'm trying to do. Like everyone's like, "Oh, that just felt contemporary," but then you added a hint of like, so that's what I'm trying to do is write a contemporary fiction piece with elements of spec fic because I feel it's usually the opposite way around. So it's like that's what urban fiction
Yeah.
I think should be. That's my personal philosophy. But I mean, people have different views on it. So how do you kind of like take your own different types of spins on the
Mm.
genres you love? Because there is our own personal taste that come in it, so how do you make sure that
Sure.
your voice is different from like the standard, like, oh, romantasy or YA romantasy or the
Yeah.
YA fiction piece?
That's a great question. I was just on CK stream and I feel like we were talking about something similar to that of how do you really, find your voice and differentiate it between other people, but then also like even project to project. And that's such a great like thought to have. And I really don't think I consciously, it's not in like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not actively being like, okay, how can I be different than Emily Henry? Or like, how can I be different than, these other authors that are out there? And it's one of those things, I feel like now I've found my voice and that tiny little niche, when like you finally like settle into something, you're like, yeah, this is me. Like this feels like it. And with like respect to my romance, the twist I have on it is I don't want to have a third act breakup like most romance do. It's so, oh my gosh, I hate the third act breakup. And it's very almost standard, I think, at this point for romance.
Yeah.
It's like every single one I read, I'm like, oh, we're nearing like that 75% mark. Get ready for something
Hmm.
crazy to happen. So I'm trying to, I guess the things that I don't enjoy in books that I read, I'm not doing them, if that counts as the answer to that question. But
Yeah.
and then even with the venture series, I feel like I bend a lot of rules in terms of like you were saying, like what I guess fits for the certain genre that you're in. Like mine, mini spoiler, has a portal fantasy element to it, and so some people like don't expect that. It kind of comes out of nowhere. I also, like I was saying, like really value like characters, and so I want people to feel, I want them to get invested, and that's my priority, is getting them to feel. And like for the most part it's like character deaths how I use that, which is not
Yeah.
always ideal, but for readers case. But yeah, things like that I think are kind of staples in like the books that I found myself to be drawn to into writing, and like also a lot of focus on grief and how we deal with really difficult emotions just as human beings, and how dealing with those things can turn you in the wrong direction or it can make you in a better direction than that. And how sometimes like in, well, I don't want to say that, actually it's kind of a spoiler. Anyway, yeah. Yeah.
Avoiding the third act breakup. That is gonna be an interesting romance. Very interesting romance for perspective. Like like how do you like have that like now the conflict now that's interesting to me because now the conflict, what becomes the
Yeah,
conflict, because now that's the challenge for you, and I think that's
exactly.
gonna be fun for you, but also I think it's gonna be fun for the romance readers because truthfully, like the tropes that make our genres very popular, they do drive a lot of things. I think the third act breakup is so not really cliche because
Yeah.
I think it's a very useful plot device to get the last third over the hump, so to
Yeah.
speak. But
If
I
it's
just
used
think there's
right, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's like it'll get you there, it'll get you to the point where the happy ending will come. It's just let's get to it's like, can we do something different in this space? I think that's a challenge for many writers, and I think for some they can execute, and some will fall back to it just because it's like, well, nothing else seems to work in that perspective. So, well,
Yeah, I'll say Elsie Silver does a really good
mhm,
job of having like a conflict without it being this overdramatic miscommunication. Why didn't you tell me like situation? So I guess my goal is kind of to be like her in some degree with my conflicts.
mhm,
But yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
yeah. Well, we got about 1 minute. We got a couple minutes left. Where can people find your work, and overall, where can we see more of Taylor?
Yeah, awesome. You can find me over on YouTube at Taylor and Wright, and also on Instagram at author Taylor and Wright. You can find my books, the entire Venture series, except the third one yet, and Venture Below, Venture Beyond are available on Amazon right now as a Kindle and as a paperback and as an audiobook. So you can grab those right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Taylor, for joining me on the show. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed our chat because I hope you had a good time because it really is always fun to talk to writers about this stuff, and it's always a fun time.
I had a great time.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and thank you everyone for listening, and we'll catch everyone later.